Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Race to Power with me, Raisha Sehgal. On the show tonight, France is on the edge after opposition parties called for Macron's impeachment, with the country's economy also facing a fresh political and economic crisis. We'll get you the complete report on the show tonight from France. Meanwhile, from India, we will tell you how the country braces for Trump's tariffs after staggering 50% US tariffs took effect on a slew of Indian goods today. All right, starting off from France. France is on the edge. The opposition parties are calling for Macron's impeachment. Europe's third largest economy is facing a fresh political crisis. The minority government headed by Prime Minister Bayrou has sought confidence vote. The political storm triggered by proposed budget cuts could script the fall of yet another government in France. More in our next report.
From the war in Ukraine to Israel's war in Gaza, French President Macron remains an active player in world politics. But underneath the glitters of foreign policy, a crisis is lurking on the home front. The politics and economy of France are at the crossroads. The anticipation of political and economic implosion has griped the country. France has slipped into a political crisis after Macron's snap election gamble. 1 year and 3 prime ministers later, the standstill continues. The minority government headed by Prime Minister François Bayrou is effectively paralyzed. France is on notice. It must drag the budget deficit below 3% that now stands at sprawling 5.8%. To cut this down, government has proposed €44 billion budget cut plan. This includes reducing the number of public holidays and placing a freeze on spending increases. Opposition refuses to back this plan, leaving Bayrou in a political quicksand, and to come out, he is betting on confidence vote in Parliament.
And there is a place for this clarification in an institution, that is Parliament, in an ordered debate, followed by a vote and not in the disorder of street confrontations and insults. I asked the President of the Republic, who agreed, to convene Parliament in an extraordinary session on Monday, September 8th.
The odds are staked against French PM. Opposition is in a combative mood. 3 major parties say they will vote Bayrou out. Leader of France's biggest opposition party has asked Macron to resign.
Emmanuel Macron must acknowledge the institutional deadlock he himself has created and either dissolve the National Assembly or, of course, resign so that a new presidential election can allow the French people to choose a new direction for the country.
Bayrou lacks the numbers in National Assembly. His government is already functioning in minority. He is likely to take the fall on September 8th. Opposition parties are in no mood to walk out to keep Bayrou in. Now the choice is between economic fallout and political survival. France's debt pile eclipses the size of its economy. According to IMF estimates, it could go up to 116% of GDP this year.
France is a solid country with economic solidity, with significant financial possibilities, of course. But that we must take the reins of our destiny, that we are now doing it in principle and during discussions on the budget, I think it's a strong signal that we are sending to the financial markets that we want to have a France that is even more solid.
The shocker came from reports where the French finance minister said that the country may need an IMF bailout, but he was quick to clarify that this is not true and the nation needs no bailout. The government falls if the budget falls. Macron faces a tough choice: to form a new government or call snap elections. President himself is safe until 2027 presidential race. But for how long he will be able to weather this increasing public pressure and policy paralysis remains to be seen. Bureau Report, WION The World is one.
And joining us on the broadcast now is our correspondent, Ross Cullen. He's joining us live from Paris. Hi, Ross. First up, of course, get us the latest on the political turmoil that we're seeing in France right now.
Well, at the moment, the French Prime Minister is trying to gather as much support as he can to try to rally people around him for that vote on September the 8th, that vote of confidence which he is likely to lose, the vote of confidence that he's called in himself and in his government, daring lawmakers to vote against him. And they've all lined up to say that they will do exactly that. They are ready to oust the government again, just as they did in December 2024, when the opposition far left and far right managed to come together, set aside their differences to bring down Michel Barnier, the former Prime Minister, over his budget plans. And now they are likely to do the same to Francois Bayrou over his planned contentious budget. He wants to freeze some public payments, scrap to public holidays are some of the ideas. He says that France is addicted to over-indebtedness, saying that there needs to be a serious conversation about how to get a grip on France's finances, but because he leads a minority government, there's always the possibility that the opposition can vote down any of his plans. The most important plan, the pressing plan, is the 2026 budget. That is going to be put on hold if he loses this no confidence vote, because he will have to resign, hand his letter of resignation to the president, who has 4 options. He can refuse to accept Francois Bayrou's resignation and ask him to continue on with the job. He can appoint a new Prime Minister. Emmanuel Macron can also call snap elections. He says that he reserves the right to do that, but that seems to be less likely, low down on his list at the moment. And finally, fourth and most distant possibility, he could resign. That's what the opposition far left France Unbowed party would like him to do, but Emmanuel Macron says he's been elected until spring 2027 and he is intending to serve all of his mandate.
Right, Ross, of course, that was the lowdown of the political crisis there in France. Talking about the economic turmoil there, the French finance minister said that France may need IMF intervention, but then later denied. Tell us about the backtracking and what can be the economic fallout if the budget proposal does not get through.
Well, there's certainly been an impact on the markets. Monday and Tuesday we saw more than 3% wiped off the French stock market in 2 days because of this shock announcement by the Prime Minister. Technically, France's MPs are still on their summer holidays, and so this was a real, one analyst called it an electro-shock moment from Francois Bayrou to try to seize the initiative again. But France's investors took fright, and we saw falls particularly in the big banks. So BNP Paribas, Société Générale and Crédit Agricole suffered major losses as well. France's government is trying to push through $50 billion worth of budget savings to get a grip on the ballooning debt, to try to bring down the deficit as well, to try to get France's finances back on track so they avoid any downgrading by any of the ratings agencies as well. It is not in the major conversation that France might be requiring a sudden IMF bailout, but those suggestions don't always make it through to the mainstream reporting on this. So in terms of an IMF bailout being something that France needs, that is not in the main discussion at the moment. It's not something that President Macron has suggested. It's not something that Francois Bayrou would be considering. But certainly France is in a moment of political turmoil and economic turmoil as well.
Right, thanks so much, Ross, for joining us at Race to Power and getting us the latest from Paris. All right, moving on. The escalation in the US-India trade dispute marked by the additional 25% tariff is less of a diplomatic negotiation and more of a textbook shakedown. US President Donald Trump's approach to global commerce operates on a simple one principle: leverage through force. Trump has not been negotiating. It's usually an ultimatum that he gives. This imposition of tariffs on India is being called an economic punishment by many. The Trump administration's stated rationale is punishing India for its continued purchase of Russian oil. But experts say it serves as a pretext for a wider trade rebalancing that is unilaterally defined by the US. The threats and high tariffs are being considered a coercion to comply. Experts say the real tragedy is how this leaves the future of trade to be pushed down the line, creating a cycle of instability where no one can plan with certainty. Now, key Indian sectors like textiles and gems will now face crippling duties. The repercussions are real and immediate as of now. Well, California Governor Gavin Newsom has stepped up his criticism of the US President Donald Trump by using X's AI chatbot. Escalating his online spat with Trump, Newsom insinuated that Trump has dementia, saying that the 79-year-old repeats, and I'm quoting here, false things over and over again. The California governor used Grok, X's AI chatbot, to ask about the symptoms of dementia. Grok responded in the affirmative to the question, which was posted as a reaction to a clip in which Trump criticized Newsom over wildfires in Los Angeles. Newsom then shared a screenshot of Grok's response on X over a post by ACYN, quoting Trump's remarks on Tuesday.
But I think that's actually just an excuse. I actually think these people are sick. There's something wrong. So we send hundreds of millions of gallons of water a day into the Pacific Ocean. They turn a valve, and the valve heads out, and we turn the valve back. I actually had to do it using force. We turned the valve back, and now they have water, but not as much as they should have, because they should. And I'm telling Gavin Newsom by this conversation right now, turn the rest of the water on. Turn it on.
On Tuesday, Trump repeated a claim he first made in January that Newsom and other Democratic officials refused to provide water from northern areas to fight California wildfires. Trump blamed Newsom and the state administration for water shortages, which he claimed exacerbated the LA wildfires. Trump further claimed that the U.S. military entered California and turned on the water. Newsom had recently sued the president after Trump sent federal troops to LA without the governor's permission.
We got deported. We're stopping.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump is weighing fresh stakes in defense contractors, including Lockheed Martin, Boeing and Palantir. According to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, he argued that Lockheed, which earns 97% of its revenue from the U.S. government, is already an arm of the government. This latest remark adds to an unprecedented wave of White House involvement in corporate America. The administration recently acquired a nearly 10% stake in Intel. Chip makers NVIDIA and AMD have been ordered to hand over 15% of sales to the government in exchange for export licenses. Well, Apple was pushed to pledge $100 billion in U.S. involvements in a bid to avoid higher tariffs. Government advisors described the Intel stake as a down payment on a sovereign wealth fund, signaling more deals ahead. Supporters say Trump's approach strengthens national security and U.S. competitiveness, which critics warn of crony capitalism and reduced corporate agility. Economists point to risks of slower growth and weaker global competitiveness, comparing it to central planning models that historically underperform. Now, for corporate America, Trump's hands-on strategy marks a new era, one where the government is no longer just a regulator but also a shareholder. Well, jailed former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, has opened a new front against the country's government. Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf has reportedly decided to boycott the upcoming by-elections in the country. According to the reports published in local media, the decision was taken by Khan during a meeting with his legal team. Later, party's political committee finalized it. The decision comes after country's two major political parties announced coalition ruling PMLN led by Sharif's and Pakistan People's Party led by Zardari, they have now joined hands, with one being a major political force in Punjab and the other in the southern province of Sindh. Elections of total 9 seats are slated to take place in 2 phases scheduled in September and October. In the last elections, Imran Khan's party claimed major election fraud. Several of their contestants claimed that they were declared losers despite winning. Apart from the attack on political front, Imran Khan has issued a strong statement against the country's army chief, Asim Munir. According to his sister, Alima Khan, Imran Khan said there is no rule of law in Pakistan.
मोहसिन नकवी क्रिकेट के साथ कर रहे हैं, वही आसिम मुनीर पाकिस्तान के साथ कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि यहाँ पे हालात ये हैं कि रूल ऑफ लॉ खत्म हो गया।
Last week, Pakistan's Supreme Court granted major relief to jailed ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan. In a slew of cases related to violence on 9th May 2023, a 3-member bench of Pakistan's top court granted bail to the PTI party founder. However, Khan continues to remain in jail in connection to graft charges in the £190 million Al-Qadir Trust case. Not just Imran Khan, his party is also caught in legal soup. Earlier this week, ATC of the city of Faisalabad convicted 75 PTI leaders and announced imprisonment for 10 years. This includes central PTI leadership and party workers, all of whom faced several charges in relation to the May 9th violence cases. With founder in jail and political survival at stake, PTI's election boycott marks a major move, with the country's government facing questions of legitimacy. PTI's boycott call could rather put a question mark on the legitimacy of the upcoming by-elections as well. All right, Nigel Farage has become UK's leading political force, playing on the anti-immigration conservative platform. Farage's Reform UK has now surged ahead of Labour and Tories in all recent polls. Infused by the confidence of public trust, Farage has launched a campaign to counter Starmer's immigration policy. A day earlier, opposition leader Nigel Farage launched Operation Restoring Justice, a plan to stop the flow of illegal immigration from detention on arrival to immediate deportation. Farage has promised an unprecedented crackdown on immigration if voted to power.
The only way we will stop the boats is by detaining and deporting absolutely anyone that comes via that route.
Under his plan, Farage said reform would leave the European Convention on Human Rights. British Bill of Rights will replace the European law, which will only apply to British citizens and legal residents. This will be UK's major exit campaign after Brexit. Nigel Farage also plans to allocate £2 billion to incentivize countries like Afghanistan to take back migrants. The Taliban has indicated its willingness to accept deported Afghans from Britain. The senior Taliban official stated that while they would not accept direct payments for repatriation deals, but they would welcome aid aimed at supporting returned migrants. Farage is betting big on immigration. Starmer has so far failed to quell public outrage on immigration. Demonstrators are taking their anger on the streets outside hotels holding migrants. According to the latest poll, Farage's Reform UK has emerged as the most trusted party to handle immigration. 31% of voters think Reform UK will deal with the issue of illegal immigration better. Only 9% trust Labour and 6% back the Conservatives. Well, all eyes are on Moldova, a small nation squeezed between war-torn Ukraine and EU member Romania. On Wednesday, the leaders of France, Germany and Poland will land in Chisinau in a powerful show of support for President Maia Sandu and her push towards European Union membership. The timing is crucial just a day before campaigning begins for next month's parliamentary elections, which are already under the shadow of alleged Russian interference. President Sandu and her allies say Moscow is pouring millions, even using cryptocurrency to boost pro-Russian parties and undermine the election. The warning is clear. Russia is trying to sway the vote, destabilize Moldova's democracy and keep the country under its influence. The European leaders will celebrate Moldova's 34th Independence Day with President Sandu sending what they call a symbolic message to Moscow that Europe stands behind Moldova's independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity. But inside Moldova, the electoral battle is sharply divided. Polls show Sandu's pro-EU party is losing ground, while pro-Russian blocs are gaining momentum. The stakes could not be higher for Moldova's future and for Europe's struggle with Russian influence beyond Ukraine. Well, a Brazilian judge has declared former far-right President Jair Bolsonaro a flight risk and ordered round-the-clock surveillance. Bolsonaro, who is currently under house arrest, is awaiting a verdict in his coup plotting trial. If convicted, he faces up to 40 years in prison for allegedly attempting to cling to power after losing the 2022 election to Lula da Silva. The verdict is expected early next month. Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Morales directed police to maintain full-time surveillance, acting on a request from federal prosecutors. Prosecutors highlighted Bolsonaro's alleged plan to seek asylum in Argentina as evidence that he might try to flee rather than face a potentially long prison term. In his draft asylum request, Bolsonaro claimed he was the victim of political persecution there. Bolsonaro is accused of leading a criminal organization that aimed to prevent Lula taking power after he narrowly defeated Bolsonaro in October 2022 elections. The trial has driven a deep wedge between Brazil President Lula and the US President Donald Trump, who has slammed the indictment of his ally Bolsonaro as a witch hunt. On the economic front, the Trump administration has slapped 50% tariffs on dozens of Brazilian imports. Reports say the move came after heavy lobbying by Bolsonaro's son. President Lula has branded Eduardo's, his son's move, as a grave betrayal.
What is happening today in Brazil with the former president's family and the behavior of his son in the United States is possibly one of the greatest betrayals a homeland can suffer from its own children.
Meanwhile, President Lula has revealed that the United States has revoked the visa of Brazil's justice minister. The latest fallout from the coup trial of former President Bolsonaro. The move, still unconfirmed by the US State Department, was announced by Lula during a cabinet meeting. In demonstrations against what he calls US meddling, Lula and his ministers wore caps bearing the slogan, "Brazil belongs to Brazilians." And with that, we slip into a very short break. Thanks very much for staying with us. You are watching WION World is One. Stay tuned.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders, psychopaths who defy explanation, international war crimes, and millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make